unfortunately, due to the late release and it being after school had closed for the day, there was no time for school districts to prepare, or very little time, and there was no form that had been sent out for parents to be ready to sign. And I appreciate Dhec working very quickly. That is not their fault. They too were notified late, but that form is now on the line, and I appreciate that, and that is helping on the situation across the state. Additionally to my health and safety concerns about the change in the mask policy, I'm also concerned about the liability that school districts might have now. The late timing of the order, not only for the time of day, but with only a few weeks left in school, this was not what I had requested. So we are doing our best to deal with that. We too have released a statement. And as you know, from that statement, I have now rescinded the mask requirement order that I, as state superintendent, had given upon the authority given me by the State Board of Education. With that, I'm also concerned about the order and the constitutionality of the order. I think it's in direct conflict for one constitutional officer to dissolve the ruling or requirements of another state constitutional officer, and that has been elected statewide by the people of the state. This sets a very dangerous precedent. For example, we also rule on standards, on teacher certification, teacher disciplinary areas, and I do not believe that one constitutional officer should be able to change that. However, I have rescinded our order in order to try to establish some type of order so that school districts can perform in peace and quiet for the last few weeks of school. One of the things that concerns me, and Dr. Traxler was exactly right, now that our primary mitigation tool of face mask is not being required, being recommended, but not required, this takes away a wonderful tool that we've been able to use to keep the operations of schools safe. So it does make the vaccination of our students more crucial than ever. So we will be working with school districts and with Dhec to make that vaccine available in communities as fast and as best we can. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer the questions as we move forward.
Thank you, Superintendent Spearman. We appreciate your time and that update. And so Dr. Simmer has joined us to answer questions. And so we're going to jump right in at this time to those that were previously submitted. The first question is Dhec concerned that mask wearing in schools might stop completely because of this order, and many districts might stop enforcing any mask rules? So Dr. Simmer and Superintendent Spearman, I'll let you both speak to that. Dr. Simmer, you first.
Thank you, Christy, and good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here with you. I think, our hope is that, schools and parents will continue to do the right thing for our children and require them to wear masks. We recognize that the governor's order gives parents the option to opt out, but I think we'll find that many parents recognize the importance of masks and preventing the spread of this terrible disease. And so I am very hopeful that we will see schools and most parents still having their children wear masks and taking the other things that we need to do, like social distancing, the use of the plexiglass shields, etc., to ensure that a safe, welcoming experience for all of our children as they complete this school year. And I'll turn it over to Superintendent Spearman if she'd like to add.
Thank you, Dr. Simmer. Yes, absolutely. I'm very concerned. In fact, while we've heard from some parents who did not want their children to wear masks, we now are hearing from the silent, which I believe majority of parents, who are saying we're worried about sending our students to school now and the mask requirement not being in place. So superintendents this morning are dealing with parents requesting to go virtual, and it's put them in a very difficult situation. So yes, I'm very concerned. I think the mask mandate did help us. In fact, it even helped in family situations. Sometimes children say, I don't want to do this, and the parents say, well, you have to because the rule is that. And now that has changed, and so I am very concerned about it. I think that most districts I've talked with this morning, though, are planning to say that they are following DHEC requirements and will ask that masks be worn. However, there will be parents and some communities more than others that will sign the opt-out form. So it puts our classroom teachers and those school personnel in a very precarious situation.
And this next set of questions is probably best answered by Dr. Traxler and then Superintendent Spearman if you have anything to add. So Dr. Traxler, when might DHEC have considered it safe to remove masks for students in schools? And is there certain vaccine rates or case counts that DHEC was considering?
So in alignment with the CDC's guidance on using layered prevention strategies in schools, DHEC recommends, the mask wearing by all people in schools. Decisions about when it will be safe to stop making, that recommendation will be based on a variety of factors, such as community case rates and percent positivity, rates of cases associated with schools, vaccination rates, whether or not the vaccines are authorized for use in various age children, data regarding the effect vaccination has on virus spread among those who are vaccinated, which data is still emerging on that topic, and schools' abilities to perform other prevention strategies such as physical distancing. And DHEC will also continue to monitor and take into consideration the public health guidance that's provided by the CDC, as well as remain in consultation with the Department of Education and school districts. And as you can see, there's no single metric or criterion that would dictate when we feel it's safe enough to remove our recommendation for mask use. It will be due to a myriad of factors playing together.
And that's a really good lead into the next set of questions, maybe for you and Dr. Spearman, or excuse me, Superintendent Spearman. So at this point, are teachers going to be allowed to remove masks in the classroom, especially if they are vaccinated? What is the risk for a vaccinated teacher without a mask spreading it to her classroom, especially if vaccines for kids age 12 to 15 start?
So I could probably answer the second part more easily, and then if Superintendent Spearman wanted to address the first part. But regarding teachers, a vaccinated teacher without a mask spreading it, I can't quantify an exact risk for a teacher transmitting the virus to their students, because just like as we talked about in the last question, there are a number of different factors or variables that play into that scenario and calculation. However, we do have data that shows that mask use decreases spread of disease, that younger children likely have less risk of transmission in the school than older ones or adults, and that vaccines are highly effective and safe, including now among those 12 to 15 years old.
Thank you, Dr. Traxler. I'll make an attempt to answer the first part of the question. We have had a call from several districts already today about teachers, and we have suggested that they talk with their legal counsel, but offer some type of opt-out for those teachers, just like they're doing for students. The liability question is the one that is really heavy on the minds of the school personnel and their school boards. Just approximately 2 weeks ago, the legislature passed and the governor signed the Safe Harbor Act. You all can look at that, but it said that the liability issues would be covered for school districts if they followed DHEC guidelines. So that has really added another level of concern for districts. I think that you will see most of them saying to their teachers, we encourage you to wear your mask, but it will not be a requirement.
Thank you for that. Superintendent, this is for you as well. With the news of the governor's order creating an opt-out form for masks in schools, is the Department of Education worried this might cause issues for teachers to keep track of who is and who isn't supposed to be wearing a mask?
Yes, absolutely. these folks have a lot on their plate already, and they're going into a very challenging time anyway with the closure of school, and entering, some of them are already in the state testing window. So they have a lot of things going on. This adds one more thing for them to do. So I am concerned about that.
Thank you, Molly. Dr. Traxler or Dr. Simmer, what is DHEC's overall opinion of this new order when masks are proven to protect people from spreading or getting disease?
Hey, Christy, this is Ed. I think, our opinion is that we certainly respect that the governor has to take many issues into account when he makes a decision like this, and that, we are certainly going to comply with the order. That said, from a public health standpoint, we continue to strongly recommend that people wear masks when they are indoors or in crowded outdoor settings. We also strongly recommend that both the teachers, students, and anyone else in a school setting wear masks in schools. We would have preferred to see those things remain mandated at least till the end of the school year. That, I think, would have been, from a public health standpoint, would have minimized the risk of infection and maximized safety for everyone in the school setting. So that would have been our preference. We certainly respect that the governor had to consider many issues, and like I say, we will comply with his order. But we are concerned of the impact of this on public health, and think it probably would have been better to wait for another month or two before we relaxed mask mandates in this way.
Thank you, Dr. Simmer. Go ahead, Ms. Spearman, you have something?
Thank you. Well, I've been on record and asked school districts and parents to be patient with us. I felt that it was best to keep the mask mandate rule in place till the end of the school year. I had already planned to rescind that. We have some districts that are down to just 12, 13 days left in the year, others about 20 or 25 days. And I felt for the normalcy and the calmness that we need in our community schools, that it would have been better to wait, and we would have taken care of it in just a few weeks. So I did not agree with the executive order.
So, Ms. Spearman, who will be responsible for holding the school districts accountable for distributing the form?
I think you'll find that the school districts themselves are responsible. I will not have any authority, will not take any authority over that. This will be them working with their attorneys. As I mentioned earlier, the main concern here, the mask really is not the form now is not really about just the mask. It's about the liability. There is no mask mandate out there now. This is all about the liability that the district would incur, and the taxpayers of South Carolina would have to help fund if there are lawsuits from children who are getting sick. So that's what the form is about. Districts are very concerned about this, so it is up to them, and they will have their own oversight over that, because they're looking at it as hopefully a way to protect them should there be a lawsuit filed later over a student or a teacher becoming sick.
So have you, Superintendent Spearman, met with council to discuss the legal ambiguities in the governor's executive order?
Well, started out with my husband and I reading it last night, and neither of us are attorneys, but we certainly could see the legal ambiguities just being normal citizens reading it. But yes, I have met with legal counsel this morning, and also had a number of attorneys from across the state calling me with their concerns about the order.
Okay. Dr. Simmer, this one might be for you. Is it an order from the governor, or is it a suggestion for districts?
Well, I think different parts of it are both. Clearly, there are parts to this that are an order from the governor that direct us to do certain things, such as create an opt-out form. There are certainly, I would also note, though, that in that same order, the governor strongly recommends that people continue to wear masks, especially in indoor situations. So the governor is still saying he thinks people should wear masks too. I think where the order comes in is that he wants to give parents the opportunity to opt out if they don't feel that their child should wear a mask in school. But at the same time, I think the recommendation part is where he is still strongly recommending that people wear masks in indoor settings.
Okay. Was DHEC consulted by the governor's office prior to the order being released, Dr. Summer?
So we certainly meet with the governor on a very regular basis about the COVID emergency and working with him. He's very interested in the data and very knowledgeable about that. So yes, we were consulted. And like I say, we meet with him very regularly about all aspects of the COVID response, and we were consulted on this piece as well.
And Dr. Summer, this question, it's actually a series of questions, but I know you can handle it. So what is DHEC's response to Governor McMaster's executive order that overturns mask rules in both public schools and the ones issued by city and county government statewide? So what's our response to the executive order? And then as follow-ups, did we agree or support the executive order? And does DHEC think that people should follow this or still wear masks, both for schools and when they are out and about?
Sure. Okay. Well, first, I think, as I said, there will certainly be a time when, and I think we are all very much looking forward to that time, when wearing masks indoors will no longer be necessary, especially for those who've been vaccinated, and when students in school will no longer need to wear masks. I think our anticipation was that by the start of the next school year in the fall, we would probably be at that point. Don't know that for sure, but we fully anticipated that the mask requirement could be relaxed once the new school year started in the fall. I think our preference would have been to delay this order for a period of time to allow more people to get vaccinated, to let the case rates drop further. We've made progress, but there is still much more to do. So I think from a public health standpoint, we certainly still recommend people wear masks. We strongly recommend that both teachers and students in school continue to wear masks. And I think the governor in his order certainly recommends that people wear masks too. So we are on the same page with that. I think the big difference for us would have been the timing, that we think that the mask mandates should have remained in place for another month or two from a public health standpoint to get the maximum benefit and to ensure that we had the opportunity to get more folks vaccinated and get the case rates lower.
Okay, and so Superintendent Spearman did reference this a little bit earlier. Dr. Summer, I'm going to let you respond first and then take it back to Superintendent Spearman. The governor signed the South Carolina COVID-19 Liability Safe Harbor Act into law last month, and a covered entity under the law that would include a school district. So does DHEC and the Department of Education mask waiver offset any potential liability concerns that could be cited under this law?
I think that's a good question. I think the answer is we don't know. Obviously, folks will be consulting with their legal counsel, as we have. So I do not know if the waiver will achieve that goal or not. I think, that's a question for the lawyers and perhaps ultimately a court to decide.
And
Well,
Superintendent Spearman, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just add to me and to school officials, this is one of the most confusing parts of this whole series of events. The General Assembly passed and the governor signed about 2 weeks ago the Safe Harbor Liability Act, saying that districts would be covered if they follow DHEC guidelines. DHEC guidelines says everybody needs to wear a mask, but now we're saying we're going to allow folks to opt out of it. So there is a huge legal question here. I hope that the waiver will cover districts, but I think that some real bright attorney might be able to wiggle through this. So we are very concerned, and that was one of and continues to be one of the number one concerns that districts are facing today.
Excuse me, not trying to share my screen. There we go. Dr. Simmer, considering that federal health officials yesterday said there may be enough data to expand COVID-19 vaccine authorization to kids younger than 12 only by late fall, do you believe the governor's executive order will put kids and others at risk in the coming months? Why or why not?
Well, we certainly hope not. I think we don't know for sure. Obviously, much depends on what people choose to do. people can still choose to wear masks. Parents can still send their children to school with masks and tell them they have to wear them. Teachers can choose to wear masks in schools. So I think a lot of this now gets down to personal choice. If students continue to wear masks, if teachers continue to wear masks, I think the risk will remain limited. We know that children, especially young children, tend not to have severe COVID. They certainly can be infected with the COVID virus, and they can spread it, which I think is a very important point. But the good news is that most times when children are infected with the COVID virus, the symptoms are relatively mild. Not always. There have certainly been children who've died from COVID, so that risk is there. And certainly we want to move forward with vaccinating children. As was mentioned by Dr. Traxler, we'll very shortly be offering the vaccine to children ages 12 to 15. I think that will be a big help. And I fully anticipate that by sometime this fall, we will be able to vaccinate children younger than that. I think if parents continue to have their children take the appropriate precautions, that the risk of the fact that we won't be able to vaccinate all children until sometime later this year certainly will be mitigated. And I think we'll have to wait and see. My biggest concern again is children getting the virus and then spreading it to other individuals, perhaps a grandparent who is not vaccinated or someone else that they come in contact with. So I think that's the greatest risk going forward of, if parents choose to unmask their children, that's who they're really putting at risk, is older family members and others that child may come in contact with.
Thank you, Dr. Summer. The next set of questions I'm going to actually lob Dr. Traxler's way. Dr. Traxler, what is the state's plan for distribution of the vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds? And is Dhec recommending or executing any different strategies to encourage uptake in this new age group?
So, excuse me. So, yes, our immunizations team has been calling providers and reaching out to unenrolled providers to help expand the pool of vaccine providers that are offering Pfizer doses to those 12 years and older. And in terms of different strategies to encourage uptake, we are certainly looking also at and talking with the Department of Education and in terms of partnerships with schools, either with Dhec or with local healthcare providers, but to hold clinics. We are doing a lot of work around messaging, sending a vaccine toolkit with handouts and flyers and other information to schools. And that does include information for students that they can take home to their parents. We're updating our outreach materials to make sure that they are reflective of these younger people as well, everyone that is 12 years and older, and following some CDC recommendations for direct messaging to young people. We're working to build vaccine ambassadors at a local level who can speak to their peers about the vaccine and experience. Developing updated messaging to share with our church communities, our faith-based communities across the state to inform family and friends of young people about the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. And then, of course, with the school year ending soon, we will be working at a local level throughout the state to reach families over the summer to prepare for the new school year coming up in August and try to get as many of those 12 and older vaccinated as possible.
Perfect lead in. So as vaccines are anticipated to open to children ages 12 to 15 in the coming days, what tips can you give parents for helping their children prepare for the shot?
Sure. So I would say a fair amount of it is preparation in terms of talking to them and communicating with them ahead of time. Be honest with them. Explain that it may sting. They likely had other vaccines in their life, but that it will be very brief. Remind them about the purpose of the vaccine and, that it's really helping to protect their health as well as those people around them's health. And that the vaccines are the best and quickest way to bring an end to this pandemic and that they're doing their part by getting vaccinated. Engage older children or adults that they trust who have already been vaccinated successfully to talk to the child about what their experience was. Even some of the details of what they can experience when they get to the vaccination site. And I think lastly, when on site, certainly try to keep, this goes for any age, try to stay calm and relaxed. That certainly will make it, less painful and more comfortable. And also, this is less of an issue as we get towards the summer in South Carolina, though today doesn't quite feel like summer in South Carolina. Do dress in clothing until we get down to young children that it's not authorized yet for. People get this vaccine in their upper arms. So dress in clothes that allow easy access to the upper arm. So if it has sleeves, make sure that the sleeves can be pulled up or down fairly easily.
So what does this potential expanded eligibility mean for our progress toward greater immunity in South Carolina?
So as I mentioned earlier, initially you're going to see that percentage of eligible people vaccinated in our state decrease as that 12 to 14-year-old population, that almost 200,000 people, is added to the total number of eligible people. However, we then hope to see not only that percentage get caught back up to where it was, but even continue to increase as adding, an additional eligible population can certainly, and getting them vaccinated can help us advance towards herd immunity.
Is there any data to support younger people having more severe side effects to the vaccine? And secondly, what kinds of things would you recommend as far as recovery for adolescents?
Sure. So the data about side effects specifically in this 12 to 15-year-old age group is among that data that's currently being reviewed by ACIP and will be made available publicly. And for those who wish after this, those are public meetings. They are broadcast on the CDC's website. I have not seen that raw data yet. However, in general, regarding side effects with these COVID-19 vaccines, we know that most of the time, when they do occur, because they don't occur in everyone, they are temporary, very brief, and they are a sign that the person's immune system is responding and is doing what it's supposed to the vaccine. However, that does not mean if you don't have side effects that your immune system's not responding. But just if you do have them, that is something important to keep in mind. Again, if they experience side effects afterwards, the most common ones are a low-grade fever, malaise, muscle aches, headache for about 24 hours. They could certainly take acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, unless they have a reason that they've been told otherwise not to take it. But that would be appropriate if necessary.
So, what kinds of things should parents of children aged 12 to 15 consider before allowing their children to be vaccinated?
So again, ACIP, a large reason that we wait for their recommendations is because they will provide any, if needed, specific guidance that might differ from the guidance that's already been given for older teenagers and adults for this vaccine. And we would certainly share that information if there is any specific different guidance. But I'm not aware of any at this time based on what we know and what the FDA has said and when giving their emergency use authorization. Certainly some of the same guidance that applies to this age group as does to older age groups, such as using caution if a person has a history of a severe allergic reaction, that anaphylaxis to a vaccine, monitoring people who have been vaccinated for 15 to 30 minutes after their vaccination to make sure that they don't have any signs or symptoms of an allergic reaction. But any specifics regarding this age group and teenagers would certainly be shared once ACIP makes that recommendation, that guidance available.
What kinds
of course, sorry, and I was going to say the one last thing is, of course, do consider parents should consider, just as all individuals should consider, their not only history of allergic reactions to vaccines, but their current health status. So if you're feeling sick, please wait until you've recovered until you go get vaccinated.
So what kind of preparations should vaccine sites offering Pfizer consider before opening vaccinations to the younger age group?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is that consent form and the need for that. And either making it available ahead of time for parents and legal guardians to sign and send with the child, or able, if they're there, to sign on site. And as I noted earlier, those are going to be specific. They're going to be unique for each individual vaccine provider, most likely. They will need to provide copies of the Pfizer EUA fact sheet, which has been updated now based on the FDA's EUA, emergency use authorization for this age group. And so those do need to be, one of those fact sheets need to be provided to each, parent or legal guardian, for each child. They need to be reminded, of course, that they have to get a second shot, and they need to be able to go ahead and schedule that appointment, just as with older children and adults who are getting vaccinated with Pfizer. And then, of course, certainly the recommendations that we know are present for all age groups. Again, making sure they have the ability and space, to monitor individuals. Letting folks know that they could experience some side effects, which are usually temporary, and can mean that the vaccine's working.
And I know you spoke to this a little bit in your update, Dr. Traxler, but any idea how many 12 to 15-year-olds there are in South Carolina?
Sure. So we have an estimate based on the current census data for certain age bands. And our best estimate is that there are about 190,000 12 to 14-year-olds in the state. And it's important to remember, we note on our dashboard online that the total number of South Carolinians that we have on that dashboard that's already eligible to receive a vaccine actually includes those 15-year-olds who are just now becoming eligible, because the age band that we have for the census is 15 to 20. So the dashboard, once we send out that guidance that we received from the CDC to vaccine providers, that dashboard will be updated to reflect that increase in eligible South Carolinians based on the census data that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Traxler. So this is going to be our last set of questions, and then I'm going to open it up for live Q&A. So I'm just letting the reporters know that to go ahead and be prepped. So Dr. Traxler, Georgia has already started vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds with the Pfizer vaccine based on the FDA's EUA. When does South Carolina anticipate starting to do the same, and how? And is there any possibility that Dhec and the Department of Education will try to hold clinics at schools, or does the storage requirements for Pfizer vaccine make that unlikely? So I know that was a lot of questions there.
Sure. So as for the last one, we are talking to the Department of Education and individual school districts, and we'll continue to be talking with them in terms of looking at the logistics of Dhec and or local healthcare providers helping to partner with schools, either maybe on site or in an alternate site for vaccine clinics for children. Certainly some of the storage requirements from Pfizer can make it more challenging, but I do think can potentially be overcome. And we have heard that there are a handful of states in the country who have already started vaccinating, including Georgia. The national policy process is that usually you wait until after the ACIP gives their recommendation and it's formally adopted by the CDC director, and that official federal guidance is provided. And so at this time, we're waiting, like most states are, until we get that. We have been told by the CDC to anticipate it, again, that official federal guidance later today, or worst case, first thing tomorrow morning, but I would imagine most likely later today. And we will then immediately share that guidance with vaccine providers, as well as notifying the public that it has been provided. And so I think that tomorrow we could start seeing potentially 12 to 15-year-olds in South Carolina getting vaccinated.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Traxler and Dr. Simmer and Superintendent Spearman, for answering those facilitated questions. At this time, we are going to turn it over to live Q&A. Reporters, like always, I just ask that you shoot up your virtual hand. I'll do my best to call on everyone within our allotted time frame. We're going to go over a few minutes since we started a few moments late. And I do ask that you only ask one question in fairness to other reporters. And if there's time, I'll circle back if you have any follow-ups. So Judy, you've got your hand up.
Thanks so much, Christy. I just had a follow-up question to what Dr. Simmer talked about earlier, and would appreciate if he and Superintendent Spearman could respond regarding advice that the governor received in making this order. Dr. Simmer, what specific guidance did you offer the governor in him seeking advice from Dhec? And Superintendent, Spearman, did he consult with you at all?
So I can go first, and then I'll let Superintendent Spearman answer if that's okay. Certainly I think the guidance we gave the governor is the same as the guidance that we've certainly given publicly, which is that we believe that wearing masks it reduces the risk of COVID infection, especially indoors. That is certainly true in schools, and that we recommend that students and teachers wear masks in schools, to the greatest degree possible to minimize the risk of spreading the COVID infection.
Oh, Superintendent Spearman, you may be muted.
Dhec. Judy, hi. I did not speak with the governor. He has not asked my opinion on this. However, I did speak with his staff, and I asked them not to do this, that we needed to finish the school year with the mandate in place as it was.
Heather, you've got a question?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, and this is more of an opinion question or speculative, like, why do you think McMaster is doing this now?
Yes, Dr. Simmer, you want to try on that one?
So,
Yeah, I'll spotlight Dr. Simmer.
okay, well, thank you. I think that's probably really a question best asked of the governor, obviously. But, I certainly think the governor has heard the concerns of parents and others. He, as I said, has to consider many factors in making a decision beyond the public health advice that we give him. And we certainly respect that there are many things that he has to consider, and I think he did that. So again, I think in the end you'd have to ask the governor, but I'm sure that he considered the concerns from parents that he was hearing from. His own belief that things are getting better, and they are. Certainly things are getting better in the state. His weighing that with the concerns of parents, I think certainly likely helped shape his opinion. But again, I would, in the end, refer you to him to ask that question.
And I'll just add too, I agree. I know that there are some parents who have been very vocal, very organized in this effort. And I know that they have approached the governor, as they have us here at the Department of Education, and certainly school board and members and superintendents across the state. It's been louder in a few communities. There are communities where there has been no request for this. So that silent majority they stayed silent. And I think the governor has responded to those requests that have been coming in very loudly.
Jason Raven, is that you from WIS Guest?
No, that is actually Adam Mincer.
Okay, Adam.
My question is, when it comes to liability, Superintendent Spearman, what about the children who have not signed this waiver but are potentially at risk of getting sick? What is the worry legally to those and the liability for schools and school districts?
Adam, that is exactly what districts are concerned about. That's what I'm concerned about as well. Wearing the mask, as we have said so often, is not just to protect yourself. It is to protect those around you. So when you take off your mask, that may make you feel better. However, it is endangering the people around you possibly. So that's the big question. And, I think that has to be answered by legal minds, but it is a huge concern for me and for our school officials. And I'm sure for many parents of those children.
Sorry, Superintendent Spearman. Jason, you've got a question?
Yeah, just a question on the end of year exams. I know that some of the students who may have been learning virtually throughout the year have to come in for these tests if they'd like. How are you going to kind of, whether it's help address any concerns parents may have about masks not being in school? I mean, what about these kids who are going to come in and take these tests who have been